We're at Larson here for the Dreamcatcher podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today, my guest is Marilyn Brown. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark.
So, how are you doing today?
I am doing fine, other than the fact that whenever I go out, I get too hot, so I'm trying to stay in with the air conditioning.
Yes, it's very nice in here. You have a beautiful home. So Marilyn, a little bit of background about you. We're in Hastings, Nebraska here. Are you from Hastings originally?
Well, my mother was born in Air, Nebraska. My
Okay.
dad was born in South Dakota. They met and married here, but my dad was in construction, so I was actually born in
Oh,
California,
really?
and
Okay.
then we moved back here when I was 3.
Ah, neat. So what part of California?
Santa Maria is in
Oh,
Santa
okay.
Barbara County, so Southern
Nice.
California. Yes,
That's a very nice
very
area.
nice.
Yes. So in Hastings, we just really met not very long ago at the YMCA here in Hastings. So have you been a member of the Y for quite a while?
Um, I started going back to the Y in 2012.
Okay.
We had just celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary, my husband Dave and I,
Okay.
and I weighed over 200 pounds, and I looked at the
Really?
pictures from then, and my face was a round ball, and I says, okay, get to work again. So that's when I came back
Oh,
and
wow.
started back in the pool. I first started with Judy Holland in the aqua size class,
Okay.
and then I started doing laps.
Okay.
And so if it works well, I try to swim a mile a day, 5 days a week.
Nice. And that's where we met. That
Yes,
is where we met.
yes.
And I still can't believe you weighed that much. I would never have guessed that.
Well, I weigh too much again because, yeah, it's been, yeah. So it's time to get back to the pool.
Yeah, the pool is good. I mean, and that's where we met, and that's where you first did your daily jokes.
Yes.
So how did you get started doing that?
I guess I started when I worked at the Mary Landing and Dietary,
Okay.
and I would leave the office 1 hour a day and work an additional cash register station in the
Ah,
cafeteria when they got really
okay.
busy.
Okay.
So I just started employees and guests. I just started saying a joke of the day, and I continued it after I retired.
Very nice. No, I like, and where do you find your jokes?
Now I mostly find them on Facebook.
Okay.
If they're
Awesome.
if they're in a role, I can find like 9 or 10 a day.
Wow. That's awesome.
And
That's
then some
excellent.
days they don't hardly have any,
Yeah.
but then pretty soon. So I have a huge list of
Yeah.
jokes. So yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
So next time I see you at the Y, I know
yeah,
that's very cool. So, and if they keep their pool and everything going, I mean,
yes,
I hope that
yes.
they do. So we're going to talk about, well, you tell us what we're going to talk about. We kind of talked about it at the Y the other day, and
Yeah. My husband passed away March 12th.
okay.
And so I was going to tell you the saga and some advice I have for people who are thinking about either making a will and so forth.
Hmm.
When we had our 3 daughters and they were fairly young, um, my husband's brother-in-law, who
Okay.
was in the service,
Okay.
was making up a will because, of course, he was in the army
Sure.
and he needed a will, and they also had 3 children.
Okay.
Well, with the circumstances, it worked really nice when they were doing a will and wanted us as their guardians for their 3 kids.
Hmm.
We did a reciprocal will, and so they would be
Oh,
guardians for our
I see.
3.
Gotcha. Yes.
And so, although I did kind of make my brother-in-law kind of look at me a little strange when I said, okay, all right, now we'll take your 3 to go with our 3 and vice
Uh-huh.
versa.
Uh-huh.
But every night we will pray for each other's health.
Aw. Well,
Because,
I like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So, fortunately, they didn't do that. Okay, so that was back when the girls were just in grade school.
Okay.
And then in 2014, my oldest daughter, Lori, who already probably had kids and yeah, had kids in college then,
Okay.
said, Mom, it's probably time you and Dad updated your will because I
Mm.
don't think we need to have guardians
Right.
anymore.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
True. Yes.
yeah. So that's when not only did we went to an attorney and we did an updated will.
Okay.
We did a power of attorney for each of us,
Sure.
power of attorney for healthcare for each of us,
Okay.
and then we also did a revocable trust.
Really? Okay.
Okay. But of course, the best thing we ever did was when we first got married, everything we did was in joint. So when my
Okay.
husband passed away, it all
So it automatically,
automatically it
yes.
went over to
Yes.
my estate and
Right.
didn't have to go through probate
All
or
that.
anything.
Yes.
Of course, the revocable trust took care of most of that anyway, but that was the biggie. And so because uh, everything was done financially and legally pretty much
Okay.
within a month
Oh, wow.
after my husband passed
That's
away.
really relatively quick.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, because I'd heard horror stories of
Aha.
people having to help, say, a
Right.
mother or a parent or someone else that took 2 years to
Yes,
clear
I've
up.
heard that too. Yes.
And then, of course, already knowing how bad it is if you die intestate, which means without a will,
Okay.
then I kind of made it a campaign the last couple months to say, by the way, do you have a will? And I
Yes.
have talked to
Yes.
people in their 50s,
Yeah.
40s who do not.
I can believe that.
Yeah. And in fact, I even talked to my dentist
Mm-hmm.
for my yearly checkup, and then I had a childhood cavity that had floated off and needed to be
Okay.
replaced. So I asked him, and I said, "You got a will?" No.
He didn't either. Okay.
And I said, "Doc, how old are you?" He said, 46. And I said, "Okay, I know you have a wife, and I know you have three beautiful children. I've seen their pictures.
Uh-huh.
Uh, you need a will." He says,
Yes.
"We've been thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been taught we need a will."
Yes.
So I said, "Okay, this is your assignment."
Yes.
So I said,
Very
I
good.
came back in 9 days, and I says, "Well, where are you on the will, Doc?" And he says, "We have an appointment with an attorney."
Well, that's good. So they
Yeah,
did take action
yeah,
there.
yeah,
That's good.
yeah. And then one of the other ones that really was enlightening was a woman who had been married but later divorced for many years
Okay.
and had children and grandchildren.
Okay.
And so I asked her, I said, "Do you have a will?" And she said, "No, I've been meaning to get a will, but as a, just don't have the money for it."
Sure.
And I said, "Let me start doing some research."
Mm-hmm.
So I checked around with some of the local attorneys' offices, and evidently the current rate is around $1,000,
Wow. Okay.
which is, I knew that was not going to happen, that she was not going to be
Right.
doing 1,000,
Exactly. Yeah.
too many other things going
Right.
on.
Right.
So I said, "Well, let me check it a little farther." And because she was not of age yet, but I was. So I called first the local offices of the Area Agency on Aging
Okay. Which makes
and got
sense.
some tips from them.
Okay.
And in fact, they said, "We're going to have somebody call you back that might have more information." The gal I talked to then said, Legal Aid of Nebraska.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
Okay.
so, in fact, I
Interesting.
looked them up online today and got a few information things on that too. And so she said, you have to go through quite a few hoops and so forth. So you have to
Okay.
prove that you have, enough, not making too much money and
True.
this and that and the
That
other.
makes sense.
And
Yes.
then they would help you with, any legal aid you
Okay.
need, including
Okay.
working with wills. So that was another good one. So, and then I also said, okay, I did look up online because I know you can print out free wills.
Okay.
If you have a computer and a
Can
printer
do that. Okay.
and if you want to go that route, because if you and specifically for even Nebraska.
Really?
And so
Okay. Okay.
so I
Perfect.
so this morning I did work on that and checked on it. You have to be careful when you
Okay.
go in and because I typed in Nebraska Free Wills forms.
Okay.
A lot of sites come up, but I did find like the first several of them
Mm-hmm.
want either subscriptions
Yeah.
or the one that I thought if you wanted would have to do it that way, it was for like about $50. you could have the will, and then it would that's the only fee you pay
Oh,
for
then you
10,
were
well, for
okay.
10
For
years.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. And so that would have been the route. So I just checked farther down, and I didn't check any farther than two. I printed out one. Um, I went to templates.legal,
okay,
and theirs was an 8 page. It was
okay,
really nice and had a lot of blank spaces and so forth.
okay,
But I also printed out, the first one I did was called freeforms.com.
okay. Excellent.
And then this is what printed out. So
Okay,
it is,
very
and of
nice.
course I don't know if you can
Yeah,
see it or not,
and I
but
can put those in the show notes too.
yeah,
So
okay.
yeah,
Yeah, and I printed it on both pages because it was just for my
sure,
information,
sure.
but you would want to do
Yeah,
it
just
singly,
hmm
not only because it'll bleed over a little to the other side, but you'll want to, once you get it signed and notarized, you're going to want to make copies.
true.
So
Yeah,
it's easier
exactly.
if you can just
Just a
make
one side.
copies
Yeah,
using a one-sided, because pretty much. In fact, there's a lot of information you can get. So
okay,
if you just Google it and go
okay,
online,
okay,
you actually don't have to have it uh, probated
okay.
before you die. That can be done afterwards. So really all you need are two witnesses. Now, the gal I talked to, I said, I would recommend that you not have your family members be the witnesses. You
True.
have,
Have a third party.
no, for
Yeah,
instance,
yeah.
when we did our wills, it was just two people in the law
Oh,
attorney's office,
sure.
but maybe two friends or something like
Yep,
that.
yep.
So they would sign in front of a notary, and then the notary would, put their stamp on it, and you
Mm-hmm.
pay a very small fee for
Right.
that. And so it really wasn't that hard
Okay.
as long as you know what you want to do.
True. And that probably keeps people from doing it maybe initially because they don't know what they want. So maybe.
Yeah. Well, and if I was the one that I didn't have a lot of money, I could print that out. If I
Mm-hmm.
had a problem, that's when I'd probably call Legal Aid of Nebraska
Yeah,
and
exactly.
say, what are
Yes.
some of these? Now, the way we did it in our case, which
Okay.
doesn't happen for everyone. My husband and I were married 62 years, so
Very nice.
yeah,
Very
I
nice.
mean, there were no divorces, and our kids had no
Sure.
divorces, so
Right.
it was fairly straightforward. So we had $3.
Okay.
So we, after, of course, everything would go either to my husband or myself.
Right.
And then once both of us would gone, it would gone equally to the three children. If one of the daughters died before we did, after we died, then it would go to their children.
Okay. That
So
makes sense.
the third of our estate would go
We
to the
go.
children.
Okay.
Now I'm understanding that years ago, Nebraska used to be the way Texas is now.
Okay.
Thank goodness they don't have that anymore. Um, most of the time, a will is executed when the spouses are older.
Right.
So the spouse
Mm-hmm.
is going to need that income from the estate,
Exactly. Yes.
especially because
Mm-hmm.
there's one less income going.
Exactly. Yes.
In Nebraska, everything ordinarily would go to the spouse,
Okay.
even without a will.
Okay.
But in Texas, if you die in a state, the spouse only gets half. The other half goes to the surviving children,
That's interesting.
which
Okay.
in most cases, the children don't need it. It's
Yeah.
the spouse that's
It
remaining that needs it.
definitely.
So just one other reason why you do not want to do
Yes.
not have a will.
No. Get your ducks in a row before you
Yes.
need to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, probably confusion. Why do you think there are so many people that don't have anything like this? Just
I
gonna
don't
do it
know.
someday, or
I read a survey they took, and they said 68% of Americans said they didn't have a will.
wow, that's a tremendous amount of
A
people.
lot of, well, because when you're young, you're immortal.
Yeah, yes, you do think that.
And then as you get older, you get busier, and then you've got things with work, you've
Yep,
got things with to do with your spouse, you've got things to do with the kids.
yep,
And then pretty soon you're going, where else am I going to have time to do anything
true.
else?
That is
And so
true.
you kind of put things off until maybe a coworker or a
Hmm.
friend dies suddenly.
Right.
And then once you're going, what would happen if that happened to me?
True.
And finally, that's when people would do it. But a lot of it is just people don't want to face the fact that they might not live forever.
And that is the truth for all of us.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I can understand that because you want to think you're immortal, but and time flies so quickly. So, no, I think that's so okay. Being the dream catcher, this is kind of a different tangent. I still have to ask, what were your dreams when you were growing up? This is kind of a different tangent from what we're talking about.
Well, I guess I don't know.
Okay.
I was a real bookworm
Really?
when I
Okay.
was younger.
Okay.
Loved reading, would go to the school library and get books that were even past supposedly my reading level
Okay.
and so forth. And I love to read.
Mm-hmm.
And and then when I was in high school
Mm-hmm.
is when I first met my future husband.
Okay.
So actually, I wound up being the cliche because I was married in 62, August after I graduated from high school.
Okay.
So pretty much I
Just
have, yeah. So
yeah.
I went from my home to our home.
Uh-huh.
And so when my husband passed away in March, my birthday, I turned 81 in April. So for almost 81 years, I'd never been
Wow.
alone. And so
Wow.
now I'm changing everything because now I'm,
Sure.
yeah. And it did work out better for me than someone that doesn't have a lot of things going on with their life other than their home life.
Right.
But because I had worked from 1974 into 2006 at the Mary Lanning, I already
Okay.
had a job and things
Okay.
going on, and then things with the kids, of course.
Sure.
And then also, I had other interests because my husband was extremely busy a lot.
Okay.
And so I had outside interests. In fact, there were times when he couldn't go, so I would take trips to see my kids out of
Okay.
state
Okay.
myself,
Okay.
just because. So I had a little bit more independence, and that made it
That
so it's a little easier
yeah, I
because
could
I'm
see
used to doing things by myself.
and that is good. Yeah, I think that's very good. So, and I know you just traveled to see some kids the other day in a very hot location.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, thank goodness, Phoenix Mesa didn't have 116. They
I'm glad to hear
while
that.
I was there, they only had 113 while I was
Oh,
there.
it was cool.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. In fact, that's Phoenix and Mesa only survived because of air conditioning.
Oh, I can't
Now
imagine.
we did go hiking at Boyce Thompson State Arboretum, but we got up at like I think I got up at 4:30 in the
I
morning,
can
and
believe that.
we tried to get there and start on the trail. It was a little after 9,
I can
and
definitely see
then
that.
we finished up long before noon, and
Yeah.
even then I was very glad to get back to
Yeah.
the air
I can't
conditioned
imagine.
car. Yeah.
Never been down there, and they always tell me it's a dry heat, and it's like I don't know. Does that make a difference? I mean, maybe it
Yeah.
does, but
Well, we took the low trail. You can't take the high trail in the middle of the summer.
uh-huh.
And so the low trail has a lot of shade.
Ah, so that would be
Yeah,
good.
yeah. You wouldn't think of Arizona having shade, but the
Uh-uh.
Arboretum is completely shaded. There's trees all along, so you don't go very far with being in the full
That would
sun.
be nice.
And of course, it makes pretty close to about 20 degrees difference just
Yeah,
going
I can
from the
believe that
sunlight to the
too.
shade.
No, I've never been to that part of the country, so I mean, I'd love to travel anyway, but that's one area that
You
uh
go where your kids are. That's how it
yeah,
works.
you
Yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, you do. How long have they been down there?
Um, Sheila's husband actually lived in Arizona and
Okay.
had three children, a daughter, two older sons. His wife died of breast cancer, and then he
Hmm.
went to a dating site
Okay.
and met Sheila, and she and her husband had been married 15 years, and they were in Elkhorn, Nebraska. and with one daughter was 6, and then
Okay.
her husband died of a massive heart attack, age 42.
Oh, wow, young.
Yeah. And so Carissa then 4 years later, she met John during the waiting site, and 4 years later they were married. So
Okay.
Sheila went from having one child to having 3 more.
Oh,
So
wow. So that's definitely a change.
yes, so I got 3 more grandkids
That's
without having to work real hard.
very nice. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that is excellent. So, no, I mean, that is so cool. But so, Marilyn, before we end the podcast, is there anything else you want to tell the audience?
Well, it's time to get off your duff. I'm going to check on you.
There you go. Awesome.
So you get, if all else fails, just go online,
Yeah.
print out something and say, is this something I can do? And if not, you need to talk to
Yes.
somebody,
Yes.
because
Pursue it.
you do not want to have someone else make the decision for
Very
what
true.
happens to your estate
Yeah.
and what happens to your children.
Yeah. It makes a not so good situation even worse if you don't have that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so everybody needs to do that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, and thank you for bringing this topic up. It's one that gets not looked at that much, because it's easy to put it on the back burner there and
Yeah.
just to another day. And you don't want to do that, that's for sure. So, well, Marilyn, thanks for being my guest on the Dreamcatcher podcast.
You're
I look forward to seeing you at the Y and
Oh,
your
yes.
jokes coming up. And
Okay, well, we better leave with my current favorite.
okay, that sounds
Okay.
good.
It was a sad, sad day when I realized that my universal remote control did not actually control the universe even remotely.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. No, that is so cool. And you make my day when I see you there. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't see you this morning. I thought maybe I would, but yeah, I always look forward to when you get done doing your laps, coming over and saying the joke of the day. So
Sounds good.
very awesome. So, well, thank you, and we'll end the podcast there. And you take care.
Thank you.